Hey everybody, BTO Pro here, and today I'm going to do the thing I can't shut up about lately, which is talk about Vercel. So if you've been stalking me or you're in one of my classes where we're building everything with Vercel right now, you know I'm a little obsessed with Vercel recently. So what is Vercel? Vercel is a wonderful bridge between web component, I'm going to call it that, but it's not, web component micro front-end development and microservice backend development. So its bread and butter is building things on your behalf and deploying them so you can review them. So let's look at the play space that I'm messing with right now. It started out being called DOCX convert. It's kind of just becoming a whole play space of random things I'm converting. So let's reload the page, we'll inspect so we can see what's actually going on when this gets executed. All right, so I got three things we're testing. Now, ASCII, I'm going to have to show you that one locally as to what it does. Let's go with DOCX converter, though, because that was the original intention of this. So I'm going to go with DOCX, find a DOCX file on my computer, like the syllabus for one of my courses. It's going to sit there. We can see it's hitting an endpoint called convert. And if we look at the headers, this is going up against the domain here, /API/convert. And now I've got a response back. So what came back, or what went up in the payload, was just the binary, right, of that file. And then what came back was the HTML interpretation of that file and something else fun. So this was my syllabus from, I don't know, spring 2020, so a while ago. So we can see it converted everything very nicely. And get a load bottom, and we also have that same information as a screenshot. Now it only got the first screen, but part of what this is trying to demonstrate, because I'm kind of playing with some things here, is it was able to take a screenshot of something. So the other thing here is, other thing I won't show about tax camp, and that screenshot came back really fast, which is another interesting aspect of Vercel. So that hit an endpoint here. We can see that it sent me back base 64. It's not sending me a file reference. We're not storing it on S3. Vercel is spinning up lambdas. And so if you're familiar with lambda, more or less think of run this little tiny function, give me a response, and then go the hell away. So there's no storage there. And it spins up, disappears instantly. However, I've already asked for hacks.camp, and we'll look in the headers from the response object when I dig into the code to see why that was so fast. But let's pull up something else, like hacks.web.org. I don't think I've requested. So that's going to sit there and think. And comes back with a response, right? So there's the hacks.web.org website, screenshotted, and it even does the full scroll, right? It didn't just take the first screen, it took all of the screens. So what the heck is going on there? All right, so fire up what this repo is. So docx convert is sitting here, but I'm going to run it locally. Another awesome aspect of Vercel. So I'm in this repo, and what I do is make sure on the same page, I clone this repo, I run install, just like I normally would for front-end development. But then instead of running npm start, which I could do, but it's not going to do what I want, I run Vercel dev. Vercel dev is going to run npm start on my behalf. You might say, why would you have a redundant layer on top of there? Well, the reason is npm start is going to give me the front end aspect of this, right? So I have a little mini web server, and this is here running. However, what Vercel dev does is, let's just refresh to be sure, I'm going to take, in this case, let's hit something with the ASCII art. So we'll go with guy dude here, and guy dude goes up. It actually makes those endpoints, in this case, localhost /API/2ASCII work the same as production. Now, there are some differences. It executes it with different constraints, or it just lets it run. It's running off my computer, so it's invoking the same little container thing. So it's faking the Lambda call. It's not a real Lambda call in that case. However, let's see what's in the two ASCII. And ta-da, there's the ASCII thing. I said you needed a console in order to see it. So in our little two ASCII file, and part of why I'm starting to get addicted to Vercel here is anything I put within the API directory, whether it's in this case convert /index.js, is going to give me an endpoint of /API/convert that I can post data to or get or whatever operation I need to. And when that file gets called for, it's automatically going to spin up a Lambda that runs what's in this file. So in the case of toASCII here, it's Node.js-based development. So the front end node assets and the back end node assets can live in the same little mini repo here. So tracing what happens when I do that, and it's very rough at the moment. I don't actually have it as a web component at the moment for this one. So what we do is we take the file input. So whenever I select a new file there, that generates a change event, and we handle image upload. Handling image upload, we get the files placed in the event target. We generate an object called form data, which is super helpful. Never actually used that before this week. And then we append a form value into it called upload. And we pass the very first file in our theoretical array of files. It's only going to be one for our example. Then we fetch against API/toASCII. And Vercel is going to make sure that that actually runs what's in this file. So much like my love for web components, where you have just composability, but also from a developer perspective, this file equals this component, right? I can start to get that with my endpoints. And so it makes microservice development really powerful. So I'm going to post data to this, hey, go give me ASCII. And I've got the form data, I'll have the upload, theoretically. Then when it comes back, it's just going to stringify it or throw it into the console. Nothing crazy there. DOCX import, very similar thing, except the response, it's going to do some little magic to make sure that the base64 image is actually rendered as a base64 image. And same thing with the go get a screenshot. Go get a screenshot hits a different endpoint, sends in the URL to capture, which is just what you typed in, and then takes the image that came back, again, base64s it, and throws it into this IMG tag. So nothing crazy going on there. However, when I bundle this up into a web component that just magically renders the thing in question, like a screenshot -URL tag, and it's able to just take that URL and then replace it on the fly with a screenshot of what it is, that's pretty darn powerful. So looking at what this ASCII thing does, I also love this with Vercel. I just have a export default function, which is my default function. It's assuming I'm running Express in this case, so I have access to assuming Express is set up, basically. So then I have request and response, right? And then I'm using another project called Busboy, again, brand new to me, ASCII, I don't know how to pronounce that, image and concat stream. So what Busboy does is it's able to accept the headers coming from the front end, right? So the front end sent me a file. It's able to read in that file event that's happening for it, ensure that it actually has a file name, ensure that it is MIME type image, so like a PNG or a GIF or a JPEG, and then it's going to pipe the results together because this file is being streamed. So you basically have to take the stream and kind of keep listening until we say, oh, we're done with that file. So once the file is completely streamed together into one object, here we get a file buffer, then I can take that file buffer object and we got, okay, so we're done with our data that gets sent to us. Make sure we actually got something in the file buffer, and then run, in this case, this ASCII thing, which is going to take data from a file buffer in this case, and a few options like, hey, make it 50 by 25, and then console log what gets printed out. So the other neat thing, right, you see the little person there. Let's pick a different one, right? And another one. And something absurd like the Hex logo combination thing, right? So it is taking those files, uploading them, and then the back end is console logging to my console, which is awesome. So console log is also super natural when I'm doing it on the front end and the back end then. Again, this file is going to console log to this data output into the terminal. Now, I don't do that on a production deploy of Vercel. Obviously, that wouldn't do anything meaningful, but still very helpful for building things. Then, so once we're done, right, we close this connection. Then we send, hey, we were successful. Here's the name of the file just to be sure. And here's the image representation. In this case, is a promise returned by ASCII. So we're taking that ASCII art and sending it to the front end. Now, it doesn't really do anything useful in the front end at the moment, but it sends it there. And then we set some headers to allow like cross origin and whatnot. Now, let's look at the screenshot tool. So screenshot tool, this certainly took some rigging things up, but there's a dedicated Chrome AWS Lambda package to ensure that you can fire up a copy of Chromium if this is running in a microservice. Vercel only limits you to like 50 megs of code to execute, and Chrome is going to be like 150 already. So in order to run these interesting little experiments where you're screenshotting things remotely, some developers put this together. I assume it's a Google thing, but I'm not positive actually. So what we do is we have get browser instance, and get browser instance checks to see if there's a local executable for Chromium. If there is, it's going to just use that. Or sorry, if there is an executable defined by this. Now, that is only going to have an executable path if this library detects that it's running code in a Lambda type of environment or cloud-based environment. So when you run it locally, it will not allow that to operate. So you're not just burning resources. So the executable path is not found in local development. In this case, I'm going to do a dynamic import of the Puppeteer library because I have access to it via local resources. And it's going to assume that I already have Chromium installed via terminal, which I do. So either way, whether I'm local development or I'm out in a Lambda, this is going to return a browser instance, which is basically what's going on with all screenshot engines. You just fire up Chrome headlessly, WebKit, whatever, and then take a picture of what it sees. So and then we can see I've got some minor error trapping for the URL to capture that comes across in the request. I take that, and then we make a low quality JPEG. We try to get an instance of the browser running. Hopefully we do. Then we make a new page, which is like opening a new tab. Then we tell that page to go to the URL in question. And then I also added this in, and this is mostly for local development currently because I've got a free tier on Vercel. It's not going to work, but on local it'll work. So what I can do is type in hacks.camp again, take a screenshot. But this is saying it has specialized support for Twitter so that if I post a link to a tweet, it's going to actually dig into the page, wait for this to be valid, which is kind of funny, data-test ID, so that they can test in a similar way, probably. So find the first thing that is a tweet, and they semantically wrap their tweets as articles. Then await the page selection, and this is kind of like a jQuery selector, of just this. So whenever I select just this element on the page, then take a screenshot of just that element. And so if it's, in the case of, there we go, hacks.camp, we get that. If it's twitter.com/hackscamp, this is going to go out. It's going to satisfy the condition of starting with twitter.com, and it's going to take a screenshot of the very first thing that it finds there. Now you'll also get some miscellaneous, like don't miss out on a thing happening and whatnot. So it's certainly not perfect, but it's pretty cool that you can invoke headless Chrome, right? And there's my pinned tweet right there. So not the same as using their API to embed a tweet. I don't want to suggest that it is, but mostly just testing. Now the other awesome thing, and we saw this just at the beginning of this little video, was I have cache control max age, in this case 1800 seconds. So what that means is that before, when that came back and was really fast as far as getting hacks to web.org, and I'll do it again, do hacks.camp, it's instant. It's because they've edge side cached this response. So by setting this header in Vercel in the response, they listen for that as it comes back from the microservice. And so they see that their system would detect then that I'm requesting the exact same URL. Now, obviously, this won't work for post data because I got to put post data fresh each time. but that I'm requesting the exact same URL as someone else did in the previous 1800 seconds. And so it just skips on spinning up that micro and just serves me what the JSON response was. Well, this JSON response had a screenshot in it, and so I get a screenshot on the other side. Now, this isn't going to be as fresh of data as there could possibly be. The other consideration is when in local development, it ignores that. So if I do hacks.camp, it's going to take the full, it's going to actually go request, and it's still pretty fast because it's running locally via Chrome. It doesn't have to go invoke anything. So certainly not perfect. The DOCX file part is pretty neat as well. Look at that real quick. So this is under convert, and this is me messing around with the fact that index.js is going to resolve to API/convert. So this takes a MIME type, which is ridiculous. I had to verify that this is actually the way you do the MIME type. But this is the MIME type for a docx file format. .doc is Microsoft Word garbage. .docx is a valid application format that is agreed upon by more than just Microsoft. So what we have here is we're calling busboy to give us our file. We pipe that big file together into one file buffer, making sure that we actually got a file name and that it's a docx file. That's what that implies. Then when we are closing the connection, again, making sure we have that data from the buffer, and we run convert to HTML. Now, convert to HTML comes from an awesome library called Mammoth, and Mammoth is able to take and generate docx files, so it can go both directions. I haven't messed with the generation of a docx file, but you can convert a file buffer to HTML. So it takes that docx file, and that one line is going to give me the HTML in question. So once promise resolves, I get their value, updates the HTML. Then, and this is mostly just me messing around to see how this all works, I call get browser instance from my screenshot.js file, right? So I had that global function that was exported that determined whether or not we are running locally or we're out on AWS Lambda. And so by importing that function, I can then leverage it to say, oh, well, do we have a browser? Okay, well, if we have a browser, make a new fake page and set the contents of that fake page to the HTML that we ripped off of the docx file. Again, that doesn't have a ton of utility. We did actually come up with a use case where we might want to do that. And then take a screenshot of what you see and send that back. And so then we send back the HTML and the file name and an image of the contents of the file. Now, I said that we came up with a possible use case for that, and it's because we're working on a way that I could, let's say, take this test file and I post it up, right? It comes back. The idea is not like a thing that just gives me HTML for a fun demo. The idea is that in Hacks, we would actually have a widget, which is hitting a global available endpoint for document conversion, that if we threw a docx file, which is very common format that we interface with faculty people in education with, right? You're just going to fire up a file. I'm going to work on it locally. Imagine we're writing course content over several months, not like, oh, we're just going to throw this together on a website. So a lot of times these things don't see the light of day when they're developed. It might be months and months. It might be, I'm going to go take a month and over the summer, because faculty typically have off in the summer, and I'm going to engineer this course. I'm going to work on these really intense pieces of content, think through how people are going to engage with this. Do all of that in files locally or in the cloud or whatever. Not really use any platform for that matter, not even like Google Docs. So I have all these files locally. I'm drag and dropping images into them, things like that. And then I want to import this stuff so we get started. And so if we have this micro that can do HTML generation off of our files, we can better meet the workflows of our users and then better translate so that they're not just, we have IDs doing non-ID work of copy and paste. And an ID is an instructional designer, if you don't know what that is. So I don't want people copying and pasting things. So this would do the copy and paste for them more accurately and sanitize the input. But let's say that we selected a folder of items. And so we go over actually something. We're going to connect two concepts here that are both proof of concept. So this is File System Broker. It's something I wrote a while ago as a different experiment. And what File System Broker does is it is a web component. It's a singleton that makes it easier to broker this API. So I'm going to say select folder. Yep. And I get this prompt that says, hey, are you sure you want the browser to be able to view this directory? I'd say, yeah, sure, view the files. And what it does is at the moment, because again, this is just another experiment, it's read off my file system and it said, oh, hey, I found all the markdown files, all of the HTML files, and all of the DOCX files in that folder that you gave me access to. Then I tried to interpret some of the file names, like in this case, O1 introduction. Okay, that would be order equals 1 versus O2, order equals 2. And so I'm currently building up this base of metadata like, hey, this file came from here and it had this as the markdown contents in question. Now, I do also have access to this as a file reference. And so we look at the raw data, I have a file system file handle. That is something that I can stream directly to a server or a Vercel endpoint. So the idea in my mind is take these files locally, read them in, gain the access to the data structure of these files spread across a whole bunch of directories. Then using that metadata of directories were intentionally made by humans, usually by a UI for some logical reason of grouping this stuff together, take those files that are in a format I can process, throw them at the microservice, and do it in a promise-based configuration. So imagine that these, minus the directories, that these like 12 or so files, imagine they're promises that are going to hit this endpoint. And so fetch generates a promise. So what I could do is use another recent thing that was made called promise progress to visualize this transaction in the end. And so promise progress allows you to bundle up fetches, which return promises, or dynamic imports in this case, anything that returns a promise, and visualize what's going on with it. So imagine you say, hey, I need to import and read off of this folder structure to generate a website. That's what we're doing basically. Hey, thanks, 11D. You gave me that fun idea. We can give it to everybody. So read off the files in that structure, generate calls to the endpoints here where it says fetch for each of these. And then if it's a markdown file, interpret it as markdown server side in this micro, return the HTML back in a sanitized form, and then keep churning through the list until I've got sanitized HTML. I could be taking screenshots of that stuff as I go, right? So I interpret it on the server, again, this micro, I take a screenshot of it, I show you the screenshot and the response to say, hey, here's what I found. And I show a little status indicator. This is sort of, I'm not going to show because it's my own personal photos, but this is sort of what Amazon has with the photo upload that they have there. You could actually select a directory and then you see after authorizing, hey, I found 23 files. Are you sure that you want to send these? You go, it puts a little widget in the corner that shows you a minified version of that image as it finished uploading. So this is linking a whole bunch of these concepts together and then throwing it out on Vercel so that we hopefully have some level of infinite scale is the idea. So playing with Vercel a lot more. 4 of my course projects this semester involve Vercel directly in my class. We'll see what people come up with there, but we're going to need to start being able to account for this because, again, imagine that you had a web component, not this gobbledygook of little HTML inputs and things, but you had a web component that when you dropped it on the page, it knew how to screenshot a thing. And so that'll probably be what the next video is. But that's the idea, is using components, be able to compose these things together. So if you're interested in learning more about the work we're doing with Vercel with micro front ends, I'll throw up a link to this repo, but we're also running Hacks Camp soon. And Hacks Camp is going to be May 9th and 10th, 2022. It's going to be held at Penn State in an awesome new building that was just opened a few months ago. So All the details are there. We'll keep adding them as we go. It's the Penn State Innovation Hub. I've been working there a couple days a week with some of my students. It's a pretty awesome space. Also, make sure to check out hackstheweb.org for more info about all the happenings in the Hacks ecosystem of things. So we'll see you at HacksCamp, hopefully, or at least on Vercel.